大家好, I'm Nathan Rich, aka 火锅大王. With everything going on in the news these days, I was going to make a video about COVID-19, addressing the idea that it came from Wuhan. I thought for a change I would do a comedy video, something fun. And while I was sitting around trying to think of something that could be fun to watch about a virus, I was contacted by my friend George over at the BBC. He said he was going to make a report proving once and for all that China manufactured the virus that causes COVID-19 on purpose. It then released the virus in a city called Wuhan in the Hubei province, he said. He offered me the chance to film his behind-the-scenes investigation, unofficially, just as a friend. But things did not turn out well for George. After viewing the video and doing some editing just to add context, I decided I would not do a video of my own, but rather simply show you the footage I took. I think you'll find it speaks for itself. George tried to prove it all started in Wuhan in November 2019. But by the end of the investigation, he discovered what he would call an ultimate truth. In his words, there is no such place as Wuhan. Hubei doesn't even exist. Take a look.
Dude, what's up, man? Hi, everybody. I'm George McCarthy. Welcome to BBC. Oh, sorry. Let me fix my hair. We here at the BBC, we express independent viewpoints. It takes real guts to do what we do. We're basically heroes.
But aren't you state-run?
Well, yeah. I mean, if we don't put out a message that the British government likes, we may get fired or worse. The U.S. government gives our government the talking points, and that trickles down to us.
How is that independent?
Our views represent our government's views, and their views represent the U.S. government's views. The U.S. government's views are independent from the U.S. people's views, and our government views are independent from our people's views. You see? We're independent.
Oh, okay. So what are you working on now?
Oh, I don't know if you've seen, but there's a new video that proves the Wuhan lab was testing on bats and coronaviruses. So we're going to do a piece to prove to the world that the lab leaked the virus on purpose.
Why would they release a video about it if they did it on purpose?
Well, I mean, we want it to be on purpose, but if we have to settle for accidental, then we'll take what we can get.
That video? Wasn't that already reported on like a year ago?
You're not going to share this with anybody, right?
No, you don't have to worry about that, man. Come on.
Okay, kid. The people who listen to us are idiots. They won't remember. We'll just pretend it's new.
Wasn't this lab theory already debunked?
Well, that's what those damn scientists want you to think. But we're going to rebunk it. That's what we do here at Big Bad China News.
Is that what you call yourselves?
Well, unofficially, just like in break rooms and stuff. Anyway, here, take a look. I have a simple timeline here of the early events of China. So we know that a US-backed research paper, if we were to extrapolate it, like we do with all general surveys like this, says that 4.7 million people had COVID-19 in the U.S. by the time they reported their first case. And that's led some idiots on the internet to think maybe the virus came from the U.S., especially because all this stuff about Fort Detrick getting shut down right before two common cold outbreaks were killing elderly citizens next to it by giving them unexplained pneumonia. Right before the commander of U.S. AMRID was replaced, the day before the U.S. AMRDC commander was replaced. And that just happened to correspond to the first massive vaping illness spike ever, which has nearly identical symptoms to COVID-19, and also the first vaping illness death. I mean, just because Fort Detrick was inspected by the CDC around the first week of June and found to be in violation of numerous containment protocols, and then shut down doesn't mean anything. There's no need to do any autopsies of the vaping illness deaths, nor of the elderly people who died from pneumonia of an unknown cause.
Why was it shut down?
You know, because of the leak.
An actual leak? Confirmed?
Don't worry about it. The U.S. is being transparent about this whole thing. Just look at the official report. There were 2 breaches of containment, which resulted in redacted. And if we look up the redacted code, USC 262A-H1D, we find that it's redacted because it was a release of a listed agent or toxin. And the definition of toxin they are using is toxic material including bacteria and viruses or synthesized molecule, whatever their origin and method of production, and includes any poisonous substance or biological product that may be engineered as a result of biotechnology. And there was another problem other than the leak of potentially biotechnology-related viruses. The name of the toxin is redacted here too because we aren't allowed to know what leaked. Obviously, we're not going to report on that though. We're just going to keep calling it the common cold, as our bosses, the U.S., tell us to. We got to keep it independent.
But doesn't that mean Fort Detrick literally leaked toxins in early June when the outbreaks began happening right around it?
Yeah, that damn Wuhan virus spread so fast. It started in November and then worked its way backwards to June and traveled across the world. You see, you still think it's a virus, but you don't get it. It's just like Trump said. You can call it a germ. You can call it a flu. You can call it a virus. You can call it many different names. I'm not sure anybody even knows what it is. And he was right, but there's more. U.S. AMRID at Fort Detrick systematically failed to ensure containment procedures. In a redacted building, workers were leaving the door open, allowing free air access to the ABSL-3 room, which is where U.S. labs store, just as a random example, coronaviruses. They were letting the air into areas in which individuals don't wear respiratory protection. But again, this proves nothing, so we're not going to cover this. And then there's this entirely redacted, so nothing to see there. Obviously not important. And this one, which apparently is showing they lost count of their toxins, and there are cracks in the ceiling, cracks in the biological safety cabinet, and missing seals. The BSL-3 labs didn't have proper entry and exit procedures, which of course is very important when you have animals in there and you're experimenting with coronaviruses and other items, which of course we know they do. And they were missing biohazard signs and improper signage on an out-of-use room to be used for BSET waste storage. I mean, really none of this is suspicious to us here at the BBC. These conspiracy theorists are so stupid to think any of this has anything to do with the coronavirus.
What's BSAT?
Huh? Oh, BSAT, that just stands for biological select agents or toxins, which are just like bacteria and viruses that have the potential to pose a severe threat to public health and safety. Like, for example, the SARS-associated coronavirus. And then there was this violation about a machine that was improperly set up, and this one showing airflow issues which can spread contaminated material, and this test that you smoked to fake a contamination of the air in the BSL-3 area and found the smoke spread into areas that people had no protection.
You keep saying BSL-3, but that says a BSL-3. What does the A mean?
Oh, sorry, I forgot to clarify. A BSL-3 is like a BSL-3 facility, but it's specifically designed for animals infected with these natural or biologically engineered toxins. So in this complaint, we see NHP animals clearly mentioned. So that's one example of the kind of animals they're experimenting on.
NHP?
Non-human primate. Monkeys. Because they're similar to humans.
And SARS-associated coronavirus is one of those BS3 toxins?
Yeah, look, it's not that hard to understand. Fort Detrick leaked something deadly to humans from an animal laboratory, and nearby, old people began dying from pneumonia of an unknown cause. So what? I don't even see how people connect these things.
So those are all the issues they found?
Oh, no. There are many more. Not using proper filtering, people using their hands to transport infected animal waste without wearing gloves, and more. But who cares? I'm trying to show you something about China. Anyway. So this part here on the timeline is that stupid conspiracy theory. What was I saying? Oh, right. When the U.S. reported its very first case, it actually had something like 4.7 million cases. That's well known.
But doesn't that paper say not to extrapolate the data?
Yeah, but no reason is given, which begs the question, why not? And more importantly, it doesn't really matter what it says, because there are numerous reports later which clearly show the case count in the U.S. as being in line with that estimate. For example, here, March 28, 2020, the low estimate of cases is 8.7 million, and the high is around 15 million. May, around 14.4 million is the low estimate, and 19 million is the high estimate. So it does seem relatively accurate, as you would expect from a general survey like this. Oh, here's a fun fact. Don't tell anybody this. The United States of America was the fastest country in the world to get from 1 case to 1 million cases, and to 5 million cases, and to 10 million. It's almost like it already had the virus for some time. Anyway, stop interrupting. Pay attention. You might learn something about the research we do here at BBC to expose China. Now, we know that the U.S. case reports are the most accurate. Other countries, especially China, lie about everything. But we here in the West are actually reliable. So, we also know that from the first reported case in the U.S. until the 4.7 millionth case was reported, took around 194 days. That tells us roughly that because the U.S. is telling the truth, it takes something like 194 days to go from one case to 4.7 million. You following me? So check this out. We're gonna debunk this stupid Fort Detrick conspiracy once and for all. If we make a time span of 194 days and link the end date to the date we estimate around 4.7 million cases were in the US, it's gonna show very clearly that the real first case would have been after September 1st, 2019. And that proves the virus didn't come from America.
Why does having your first case after September 1st, 2019 prove you're not the source of the virus?
Well, think about it. There's a Spanish study that found the COVID-19 virus in sewage samples from March 2019. But it was only in one sample, and there's no way to verify it, even though the scientists swear it wasn't contaminated. And after that, there was some Brad Pitt lookalike on the internet that said maybe the first case in the US was in August 2019. But the first 100% verified, absolutely foolproof, non-extrapolated, antigen-tested cases in the world currently are believed to have been in Italy September 1st. So in order to find the source of COVID-19, everything after September 1st is totally irrelevant. That's why we're going to prove once and for all that the US's first COVID-19 case was after September 1st, making it impossible to be the real source. So let's take this 194-day time span, which is the length of time that the US says it took to grow from 1 to 4.7 million cases, and let's drag that over and put the ending at the time in which they actually had 4.7 million cases. So that would tell us approximately when the first case really was, according to them. So let's see. That makes the first case in America... Something's wrong here. 194 days subtracted from the 4.7 million cases in the U.S. is June 2nd, 2019.
June? Like when the CDC found those issues at Fort Detrick? With the infected monkey poo and all that? And the old people dying from mysterious pneumonia right next to the lab right afterwards?
This can't be right. And shut up about possible coronavirus leaks on June 2nd, 2019 at Fort Detrick. It's not related to those old people who got the common cold. Lots of people suddenly die from pneumonia when they get the cold. In multiple locations around a laboratory that recently reported an infected animal-related toxin leak. I'll prove it! Let's find some reports about this thing. God, you're annoying. Here, this report gives a case count of the first outbreak. Let's see here. 54 cases, July 12, 2019. So, how long did it take the U.S. to go from its first reported COVID-19 case to its 54th reported case? 40 days. So if we apply the same line here, we can see that according to the U.S. case reporting, if this really were COVID-19, 54 cases on July 12th would be July 12th minus 40 days is, I don't know what the...
Does that say June 2nd?
Hello? Oh, General Ned. Oh, yes, sir. Good, sir. Fine, thank you, sir. Sir, we have an issue. Yeah, about that stupid conspiracy theory stuff we're pushing, or debunking. Does June 2nd, 2019 mean anything to you? Because of... Yes, sir. Yes. Yes, sir, I understand. No, I won't. Yes, sir. But what about our freedom of speech? National security? What does knowing where my family lives? Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I understand. Yes, sir. Okay. Bye, sir. We're not going to cover this. It's China. China is the one that started this.
But what about June 2019?
Shut up. Just shut up. We're talking about freedom of speech here, so shut up. And with this, we don't have any freedom of speech, okay? We just gotta keep it independent. Okay, Nathan, think. George, think. Okay, here's how we're gonna prove it was China all along. Okay. We know that according to China's CDC, they estimate that the real number of cases in China is about 5 times the official number. Their numbers mostly didn't include asymptomatic cases. But forget that, because people are too stupid to understand that. So, let's just say the real number is 10 times the confirmed cases. Yeah, that's gotta work. Now, we know that when Wuhan was closed down, China reported they had 571 cases.
Why that day?
Well, because after that lockdown, the increase will be very different than it was in America, which never did anything like that. So we need to look at the most raw in the wild time span, which is from the first case until the lockdown. So 571 times 10, that's how many actual cases there were at the time. See what I'm saying? But we can't trust China, and we know we can trust the U.S. So the U.S. went from reporting one case to reporting 5,710 cases in 55 days. So if we make a time span for 55 days, line it up so the end is the day Wuhan lockdown. Damn it! It's the end of November. We need to go back to before September, or China cannot be the origin. Okay. What if just instead of multiplying it by 5 or 10, we multiply by 100 less? China said they had 571 cases, but it was much more than that. Well over 50,000. So let's see. If we line that up, that doesn't work either. Even if they were only reporting 1 out of 100 cases, that's still only November. That's around the time of Brazil's first case. But we need to get this before September.
Are you sure it started in China?
Yes, of course. Didn't you see that video of the guy walking around in a cave investigating bats and coronaviruses? He worked at the Wuhan CDC right next to the infamous wet market.
Was the wet market the origin of the virus?
Huh? No. And nobody thought that for a very long time. The earliest case in China had nothing to do with it. And of course we have this really inconvenient Italy data from months before that wet market was infected. Obviously we can't mention all that. My orders are, I've independently decided to focus on China. How many damn cases do I have to add to this thing anyway? Okay. China only reported 1 out of every 1,000 cases. No, we know China did this to us, but how? They detected only 1 out of 4,000 cases? Finally, earlier than September 1st, 2019, we got it.
But what about the first case in the U.S. being between June and August 2019?
Huh? Oh, yes, it's June cases. Did I say 4,000? I meant to say 11,500, because that's how many cases need to be multiplied to make this work. Finally, the timeline fits. China's first case was June 1st, 2019. Then the first American was infected by a Chinese person. And this only works, of course, if China was not only underreporting by this much back then, but continued to do so. It all makes sense.
Underreporting by how much?
Oh, well, this scientific analysis proves that China's only been reporting 0.0087% of the cases the entire time. The mystery is solved. For every one case that China tells you it actually has 11,500. And that means that when Wuhan, a city of 11 million, was being locked down, they actually had 6.5 million cases. And reports tell us that 5 million people left Wuhan before the lockdown, leaving only 6 million people there, which means there were actually more infections than there were people. The plot's thickening, but it didn't just stop there, because people traveled for Spring Festival, and those 5 million people spread cases everywhere in China, and that brings us to, oh my god, let me take a look at this. Right now, they're reporting around 120,000 cases, times 11,500 is, oh my god, China has nearly 1.4 billion COVID-19 cases. Oh my god. 100% of everyone in China is infected with COVID-19. We've got to get this to the presses immediately.
But what about the people of Hubei?
Don't you get it? There are no people in Hubei. The death count is 65 million. Remember when we were told that 21 million cell phones letting their money run out during an extended Spring Festival meant 21 million people died? It was all true. And when they told us that the backlog on cremations from people being off of work was actually evidence of even more dead, they were right. And the time they told us that NASA weather forecasting images were actually showing us sulfur dioxide plumes from millions of dead people being burned, those were no weather forecasts.
I'm not following you.
Dude, how hard is this to understand? Think about it, man. We know one thing is definitely true. China is bad. And because we know that, we can form our science around proving that. We keep moving the numbers up and up and up until they prove what we already know is true. And that proves the one thing that you're still missing. It's right there in front of your face. You just don't get it, do you? There is no Wuhan. There is no Hubei. Those people are long gone. It's a massive cover-up. I'm not sure how they did it, but they did it. There are no more Hubei people. And soon, there won't be any more Chinese people either. Just look at them out there. Relaxed regulations, walking around smiling, laughing, and playing. They don't know, they're all ghosts walking. I thought maybe the virus originated in Yunnan or Hubei somewhere with some wild animal biting a farmer or something. I thought maybe it originated in the place that has the first known case. Italy. This would explain why there's so few cases outside of Hubei. But now I know that everyone in Wuhan was sick before they traveled home and infected everyone else, which caused the 1.4 billion sick and dying people in China we see today. Everything has changed, man.
But didn't I just read about how scientist David Baltimore, who said he found a smoking gun proving the Wuhan lab conspiracy theory, turned out to be wrong about his findings? You know, the findings that had driven a lot of the recent resurgence of interest in the Wuhan lab leak theory? Didn't he walk his statements back after being corrected?
He's just a puppet for the Chinese government, just like the WHO. Everyone knows that. And stop calling the Wuhan lab proven fact a conspiracy. We're talking about a secret plot by hundreds or thousands or even millions of people to hide something from the entire world. That's not a conspiracy because we're saying it's true.
Okay, but wasn't I also reading about how the Department of Health warned Virginia residents of increase in respiratory illnesses literally the day after Fort Detrick had its access to toxins suspended? And what about all those people who got pneumonia or died from the common cold near Fort Detrick?
In 2003, there was a similar outbreak in an elderly home that killed even more people. And the cause was determined to be the common cold and other factors like bacteria. See, this happens all the time.
Was there a biological laboratory nearby leaking toxins immediately beforehand?
Get out. Shut the camera off. We're done. We have our story.
Okay, man. Whatever. Hey, it's me again, Nathan Rich. I'm not sure what's going to happen to George. Hopefully he won't get in trouble for me airing this, but I just think it's really important to show his findings to the world. I promise I'll try to find something comical to say about these stupid reports recently. You know, the fact is this virus could have originated in China for sure. But everything I see says if this was the case, it would have been somewhere with almost no population density. Because if it really started in Wuhan, this would be the slowest moving outbreak ever imaginable in a city of 11 million. That's because it would have had to have started well before September 1st, the first known case in the world. And based on the timeline of other countries' case reporting, combined with China's population density, it just doesn't add up. It seems to me the next steps for science might be to inspect early cases from each country, the United States included. Maybe we can start with some autopsy reports for people who died in June from either of the two mystery pneumonia-causing respiratory illnesses that broke out in June 2019, right next to a biological laboratory that we know for a fact experienced a leak of a toxin around 3 weeks earlier. If for nothing else, just to rule this theory out once and for all for Georgia's sake. Until next time, I'm Nathan Rich. Thanks everybody. 谢谢.
What the hell? Oh God. They're everywhere.